Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Beatriz Acevedo. I am the co-founder and CEO of Suma. And this is our very first Dinero Session. And we could not be happier than to be partnering with Stockpile. This is a company I personally love. And I discovered just by looking at what I could give my nephews and my own kids over the holidays. So I found Victor Wang, who's joining us today, who is the CEO of Stockpile on LinkedIn. So I have to be thankful for LinkedIn for this. And I stalked him one middle of the night, just saying, I love what you guys do. I want to partner with you. And he immediately responded and said, what you are building for the Latino community is very important for us as a brand, and we want to be partners. And to me, that speaks volumes. And, you know, I've stalked other CEOs of other fintech companies and gotten no response. So please know that this was one of the companies that immediately answered to our request to help us start building the knowledge so we can start building this generational wealth in our community. So first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Victor, for being here. And I also want to introduce to you guys Nadia Jamshahi. I pronounced the last name. I hope I got it right. And she's the strategy and operations principal at Stockpile. So between both Victor and Nadia, we're going to be getting a full presentation on how easy it is to start investing in the stock market with as little as $5. So that is very exciting. And I know Victor said even as little as $1 is possible. So that's great. So anyway, welcome. I want to welcome both of them. I know we have a lot to get through. I hope you guys use the Q&A function, because we are going to be addressing hopefully most of your questions. We got a lot of questions from our audience ahead of time that I have right here ready to address and to ask both Victor and Nadia on your behalf. But we want to try to get to as many questions as possible. So I am going to stop talking. I'm going to let them go through the presentation, and hopefully by the end of this hour, you guys will have so much confidence and start your journey into building this generational wealth for our community via your journey in starting to invest. So without further ado, take it away, Victor.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, we are definitely excited to be here. Stockpile is really founded on providing ways for people to start investing. But I think one of the things that's most important about today is we want to provide you information about how to start investing overall. So it's not just, you know, how to invest with Stockpile. We want to provide you with information that's going to be helpful to you no matter where you go, no matter what brokerage firm you work with. We want to provide information to try to help you start investing and to start your investing journey. So don't feel like, you know, this is just for Stockpile. So one of the things we want to start with is the fact that when you think about the fact that you might not be currently investing, it's not uncommon. 86% of American families don't currently invest in the stock market. So, and you know, what's interesting is that the biggest, even though it's one of the biggest sources of stress, money is something that we all struggle with. It's more stressful than work. It's more stressful than family responsibilities and even our own health. So we have to try to think about the things that keep us from investing. Because even though we might understand that it's important to invest for the future, there are like hurdles for all of us. And I think the first thing we look at is that investing is hard to start. You know, most people don't know where to begin. It's confusing. People don't understand how it works. And investing is not inclusive to the average American. We're emotionally excluded and often made to feel like we simply don't belong. And it's even worse for women, for lower income families, and for families of color. So when Stockpile was formed, what was really critical for us is that we saw the need to provide equal financial opportunity. And so what we really focused on is really trying to make investing as simple as possible. So if you think about some of the other things that you want to try to start, starting investing is kind of like fitness, right? It's hard to start. It's some learning curve. It's hard to create a pattern of behavior. So what we try to do is look at how we can help you just begin your investing process. So we want to first make sure it's as simple as possible. We just want people to get started. We want to make sure you're building confidence by learning about investing as you're doing it. And we want to create inclusion. We want to make sure that we're helping people achieve their investing goals by encouraging long-term, consistent, and sustainable investing behavior.
And Victor, one quick question, just for people who are asking if this is recorded or live, this is live, so this is your chance to ask all the questions. I am looking at the Q&A and we will address. I mean, I have nowhere to go after this session. So even if we go over, we'd love, I know Victor said, I'm going to clear my whole afternoon for this too. So we'll be able to address as many questions as you can. So please do know this is live and we'll be able to answer your questions at the end of the session. But one quick question, when did this, because one of the big perception of that, this is not for everybody, or a lot of people in our community say, you know, investing is for rich people. But there was a moment in time before companies like Stockpile and others where it was very difficult to be an investor. You had to be accredited investor. You had to have a net worth of $1 million. Like that was definitely not certainly inclusive or possible. When did this change and why hasn't it been conveyed to more people?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few different things. When you look at the industry as a whole, stocks were often priced, themselves at very high amounts, $1,000 or more. So it really wasn't affordable for most people. So that's one of the things we tried to do is make it affordable by making it so that you can buy part of a stock. Think about, there might be a large pizza. You might only want one slice of that pizza. So that's really important for us to really, figure out a way to get people started. The other thing is that there's really not a lot of, people don't have a lot of financial learning tools when they're growing up. We usually don't get lessons about finance or accounting unless you go into finance or accounting. And so there's not a lot of information when we're growing up to make these choices. So one of the things we really do is try to make sure that there's a way for people to learn the skills necessary to start investing.
And there it is, fractional shares, which is exactly what you were explaining regarding buying a slice of pizza versus buying the entire pie, correct?
Exactly. And that's one of the key things with Stockpile is that, the most important step in investing is the first one, is just simply starting. It's kind of like, as we said, it's kind of like when you exercise. The most important step is that first step to just get out of the bed and get to start working out. And so the things we look at. When you look at the other things that you want to do is get people started early. So at Stockpile, we have custodial accounts. As soon as someone has a social security number, if they're 1 year old, they can start being an investor. So we can enable teaching and from parents and kids to learn about their own finances at a very young age. And the other thing we have gift cards. And what it is that's nobody else has gift cards. And what it does is it allows people to figure out how to start investing in a very simple way, that you can buy a gift card for somebody and just hand it to them or email it to them, and they can create an account and start investing. And that's about as simple as you can make it. So that's a really important thing that we developed. One of the things we also know is that kids today, they don't check their email. So just this year, we launched out a feature where you could send a gift of stock by text as well. So, what we're trying to do is really just eliminate the barriers and make investing as simple as possible.
Oh no, and I can attest to that about the gift cards. I know I encouraged my mom this year to give my nephews and my own children Stockpile gift cards for the holidays, and it was super easy. Although I was the person that got picked to do the transactions, it took a few minutes to do it. It was great. You could email, you could print, you can send an email, text. It was very, very easy. So love that. And I think that's what, we did it even with our own Suma employees, interns, etc. So now everybody can have access, but nobody knew they could do it. So that's what got us so excited for you guys to guide us through this session. So we're
thanks.
And I want to remind everybody on the session that at the end, courtesy of Stockpile, they have been very generous in gifting all of you, and not all of you, but people who win in our raffle, a gift cards to start investing. So please make sure to stay towards the very end, because there will be some awesome stock prices courtesy of our friends at Stockpile. Okay. I won't interrupt you anymore, Victor. Keep going. I know we
No
got
problem.
a lot to get through.
Oh, it's and now it's actually I'm gonna have Nadia go through a brief lesson for all of you with the basics of how to get started.
Perfect. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Beatriz. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your days to listen in and learn with us. Also, a quick shout out to my fellow stockpilers, some of whom I am sure are listening in right now. Thank you for your support, guys. Alrighty, let's dive right in, shall we? Cool. So let's start with the basics. What is the stock market and what does it mean to invest? Well, the stock market is actually just a bunch of markets, the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, the London Exchange, just to name a few, where companies and investors have the ability to meet. Now, companies use these markets to raise money through investors, who then make their money when investments increase in value. And so what does it mean to invest? Well, a stock is an investment. When you purchase a company's stock, you're purchasing a small piece of that company called a share. Investors will more often than not purchase stocks in companies that they think will go up in value. If that happens, the value of the company going up, that is, the company's stock will generally increase in value as well. Now, on the flip side, of course, there's also a chance that the value will go down. So as the value of the company goes up or down, so too does the value of your investment. And then of course, investments and their profits can be a great way to pay for special items or events, or, what's better than just saving up for the future. So here at Stockpile, we believe that the sooner you get started, the better. And we think that that part is the biggest hurdle. And so we try our best to make it as easy as possible to get started. Anyone with a social security number and a permanent address in the US can be an investor.
And Nadia, I want to just stop you right there 2 seconds, because we already have in the Q&A a lot of questions about this, right? And we had a hunch that that was going to happen, of course. Even in my own family, my brother is not a US citizen or a resident. He lives in the border between Mexico and the US, so he's a Mexico citizen. However, my nephews, his kids, are US born. So we were asking, well, if you have a social security number, you can invest, at least here in the States. But if, for example, you are a parent who does not have this immigration status, your kids, as long as they have a social security number, they can do it, and you would need to find somebody to be their custodial that has a social security number, correct? It does not necessarily need to be a parent, but somebody that you trust within your family or network of friends. Can you explain a little bit about that, of how that would work?
Yeah, absolutely. So if the adult, the parent in this case, doesn't have a social security number, you can always find somebody, a family member, a trusted friend, who does have a social that can act as custodian on the account. I think one thing that's really cool about our model is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the parent of the minor acting as custodian. It can really be anybody, ideally someone, a family member or someone who you trust. So yeah, and then just to go a little bit more into that, the assets in the account would belong to the minor, but they are in control of the adult, the custodian on the account, until the minor reaches adulthood. So you really just want to be sure that you are selecting somebody trustworthy to be the custodian of your account, right? Feel free to review the activity on the account on a regular basis. We allow the minors to create their own logins so that you can, they can log in and check on the status of their investment, see the performance, browse through our stock offerings. And then as the parent, just check in every once in a while to just make sure that everything looks normal, looks good. So, on whatever cadence you feel comfortable with.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So, like I said, anyone with a social and permanent address can be an investor. So one stat that I wanted to throw out there, which I thought was super cool to note, was that the market as a whole goes up by an average of 9.8% per year, which is about 9.75% better than the average savings account at your local bank. So
and even better than under your mattress, or like a lot of Latinos do it inside a Café Bustelo canister. That's even less than the bank account. So yeah, this is a really great graph for all of us Latinos that tend to not be super trustworthy of some financial institutions. And I have so many stories of where my own family members and some family members from my teammates at Suma hide their money. But this is good that everybody sees it. This is definitely a much better option, and it's great to see it this way for sure. Another question on who can be an investor, just because I'm seeing it here, and before I went to start addressing some of the questions. Somebody asked if they could invest if they're going through a process of bankruptcy. So I guess if they still have a social security and the permanent address, they can still be buying stock, or what would the answer to that question be?
Yeah, so I think with that is, as long as you have a social and permanent address, then that, you should be able to invest. However, there might be a couple of barriers. We might ask you to, upload some additional documentation, which we'll get into later on during the demo. But, as long as you have those items, you should be good to go.
And if somebody, this is another interesting question, if somebody has a company, right, can they invest via the company's name and not their own? Like, could I just take out my Amex and buy stock in the name of Suma, let's say? I'm sure my investors would not approve that, but let's say you're the full owner. Is that a possibility?
So the account would have to be in the name of the individual. However, we do offer, you have the option to purchase stock with a credit card on our platform. You can fund your account with a debit card, or you can buy with a credit card. So as long as that credit card is a valid one, then that should be fine.
Okay.
So what this means essentially is that if you get in early and you stay there, the chances are pretty good that your money will grow over the years. As a matter of fact, by starting your investing habits early, you could potentially wind up investing less and making more money than people who start later on in life. So what affects a stock's price? Well, it's really all about perception. What makes a stock price go up and down is really based on what people think about it at the time. They consider things like, how strong are the company's financials? What's the competition doing? Do they have a good product? Are the company leaders making wise decisions? And so on. This popular perception impacts the demand for the stock, and the prices in the market are set by supply and demand as buyers and sellers place orders based on their current perceptions.
We knew we were going to have, and I think this is a good point maybe to address it, and maybe Victor, you want to jump in, or Nadia continue to address it, but I see a lot of questions about this, and obviously it's the talk of the moment. People want to know if we could address a little bit of what's happening with AMC and with GameStop stock. Because the perception there was, well, this is stock that it's not worth a lot, and that's why people had it, priced low. But then that changed overnight. Yeah. And how much are we going to be seeing of this? That's a very new trend. That's certainly not the way it's been traditionally done in the market.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing that, we definitely want to address that. I think the thing that's really important is that for the case around that is very unusual. So for the part we're at right now, we really want to make sure we cover the basics that really apply to all investing. But at the end, we do want to address that in particular, but we want to make sure we cover the basics before we.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll wait for that question at the end. Great, thank you.
Cool. So, spread that risk around. It's wise to spread your risk between multiple stocks and industries because, hey, nothing is a sure thing. Like you just mentioned, Beatriz, a stock that's up today could be down tomorrow and vice versa. So the key, diversification, or in simpler terms, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
And then also keep in mind, it could be beneficial to buy and hold rather than get excited or disappointed over a stock's short-term movements. It could be better to take the emotion out of it, think about the big picture, and invest over the long term. And then last but not least, when trying to determine what to invest in, do your research. Start with what you know and love. Are there certain brands that you're loyal to? Are you into fashion, gaming, cooking? Next, learn about the company. Do some homework, look for positive or negative indicators, check news articles, press releases, Wikipedia, or their historical performance on Google or Yahoo Finance. I know I check Yahoo pretty much every day.
Yeah, and what's pop culture, right? Like what's happening? I have a friend that the day that we went into our lockdown almost now a year ago, she was like, okay, I'm buying stock on Zoom. Like she just knew Zoom was going to be a brand name very, very quickly because this was going to happen and we're all now going to be working from home. So also like pay attention to what's happening around you. It's super important, right? Besides, research on more formal trades maybe.
Yeah, and I think just staying up to date with current events is a good practice, even outside of investing. Just be aware of what's going on in the world around you and your community, but especially in the investing realm, it's good to kind of stay up to date on a day-to-day basis with what's going on in the markets. Cool. So, and then make yourself answer some basic questions. I have a few good ones to start with. For example, how impressed are you with the company's products and services? How is the company doing in the marketplace? Do you think its best days are still ahead, or does it feel overrated to you at this point? What's the outlook for the industry? What are the big threats to the business and to the industry as a whole? And then lastly, just be true to yourself. Get to know yourself as an investor. What's your risk tolerance? What are your objectives? Are you a short-term or a long-term investor? So those are just some of the questions that you can ask yourself before you get into the markets. So at this point, we could get into the demo. Sound good? Yeah?
Yeah, let's go for the demo. I know
Perfect.
We have a lot of questions, but that way we'll get through the entire presentation and then we'll be ready to address people's very particular questions, which I think
perfect.
is going to be very useful.
Perfect. So as many of you may already know or may not, one feature that sets Stockpile apart, as Victor mentioned earlier, is that we offer custodial accounts. So what this is an account in the name of a child or minor under the age of 18 with an adult acting as custodian on the account. This is just a great way to get your little ones started as early as you'd like or as early as they'd like. So we are going to start. We're on the Stockpile homepage, stockpile.com. And then from here, you're just going to click sign up in the upper right-hand corner. And you'll be prompted to enter your basic information. So, just the standard stuff, first name, last name. Let's do a valid email address. And then you will be prompted to just confirm that email. And then lastly, we will ask you to select a password, one that you can remember, hopefully, and then one that meets our minimum requirements. We list them out on the right-hand side. So once you're done there, go ahead and sign up. And then you'll be prompted to choose an account type. So for the sake of this example, we will select custodial. Go ahead and select whichever individual's information you first input, just so we don't get it confused later on. So that was the adult on the account. So here you're going to be stopped at an important disclaimer that federal law requires Stockpile to collect information to verify that you are really who you say you are. Not to worry though, it's for your own protection. And then you'll just be prompted to input some additional info, date of birth, a phone number, and then a street, a residential address. Like I mentioned before, anyone with a social security number and a permanent address in the US can sign up for an account. And, we have some users who are a little hesitant to, input this information, but we really want to just kind of reiterate that all of the information that you submit to us is encrypted, secure, and we really take the privacy of our users very seriously. So not to worry there. And then lastly, just enter that social. There we go.
You're a brave woman putting that social there, but
oh no,
I'm
that's
hoping it's fake.
It's a fake.
No.
And then
yeah, keep going.
No, go ahead. Did you have a question?
No, I had a question regarding custodial that you showed a little bit earlier, because I know, when we gave the gift cards to my nephews and to my own kids, obviously they're super Gen Z users of technology. So immediately they downloaded the app, had an account, and then my sister-in-law and I got prompted to saying, oh, your kid is wanting for you to approve. But because I had an account also, like it just I couldn't approve it. So is it better that you first go through this process and put their account and then give it to them? Or, what's the order? Because I know I went through the, like a representative at Stockpile over the holidays who was very helpful. And he was like, oh, let me delete their account so you can now add them to your account. So I thought, okay, is there a process where the adult needs to initiate that and not the kid, not the minor? Or does it matter? I don't know exactly what I did wrong.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm glad our folks on the support team were able to help you with that. So it really depends whether you have an individual account already, or you don't. So let's say that you don't. So in this scenario that we're presenting right now, we're assuming that nobody in the family has an account yet. So you're going to start from our sign up page. However, let's say that you, Beatriz, you already have an individual account with Stockpile. That's a different flow. So you would log into your individual account, and then we have an option to add an account.
Got it.
And that's the flow that you would go through.
Okay. So let's keep going as if nobody had an account.
Exactly. Perfect. So a really quick note on this last question right here. Unless you're a stockbroker or, a big shot of a publicly held company or a foreign politician, go ahead and keep that checked as none of the above. We keep that as the default option. So just leave it as is. And then here we're going to ask you just to review your information for accuracy, make sure everything looks how it's supposed to look so that we avoid any hurdles later on down the road. Looks good. So here we're going to set up the minor's information. Go ahead and complete all of those fields, pretty similar to the adult's information. And then here we have checked that it's the same home address. Let's say, the minor lives in a different address. You just uncheck that box and you'll be prompted to enter their address, wherever that is. And then again, SSN.
And is that your social security or the minor's social security?
That's the minor's.
Got it. And we did say that, the moment somebody has the social security. So I potentially could give this for a bautizo, for a baby naming, as a gift to a child that's just born, as long as they have a social security, correct? So there's really no age limitation. And we've said that earlier that we start investing, the better. I know, Victor, you've had this conversation with your own children. We were talking about it of potentially if you start investing $1 every single day at age 18, by the time you're 50, you're a millionaire, right? And that's what? You can't even believe it. But it that's a possibility. So the earlier we get our family started, which is the way a lot of our non-Latino families start. I'm married to a non-Latino, and his dad, instead of giving him toys for his birthday, would give him stock in companies that he still gets checks to this day. And that is incredible. I never got that because my parents didn't know that was a possibility. But now that you guys are on and that you're getting this information, just like Victor said, whether you do it with Stockpile or whether you do it with a different company, we personally like Stockpile and we think they're very committed to our community, but obviously the choice is yours. But do think about maybe not buying 4 toys for a birthday and buy half and half of stock, right? And it could be in the companies, like we were saying, that you love or that your child loves. We just gave a gift to a kid who turned 5 or 6 last week. and he left me a voicemail on my WhatsApp, and he was so adorable. He was like, Tia B, I'm going to buy stock in Tesla, Apple, and Netflix. And I was just like, oh my God, this is adorable. This is amazing. So we do want to get our community to have the same opportunities that other cohorts have had over the years in how to invest. And now that you can do it with $5 with companies like this, there is no excuse of why we're not starting to build the wealth for ourselves and for our families.
Yeah, exactly. And the sooner they get started, the more time the money has to grow, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's also, obviously my mom is close to 80 and she's listening today, and she has her stockpile. And it's never too late either, right? Like it's definitely better than under the mattress. So I also want to encourage our boomers and beyond who might be on. If you're not a child, that doesn't matter. That's still going to give you a much better return potentially than having it in the Café Bustelo canister or at home somewhere hidden, for sure.
Definitely. There's no better time than today. Perfect. I'm going to finish this up. So again, just review the miner's information. And then at this point, you should be done. Sometimes, however, in instances like this one, you'll be asked to upload a couple of legal documents, usually just a photo of your social security card and a state ID, like a driver's license should be fine. This is just an extra verification step. So you'll select upload, you'll choose a file from your laptop or your computer or whatever device you're on, your phone. We accept JPEGs, PDFs, or PNGs. So we're pretty flexible with that. Pretty straightforward. You'll submit that. And then if you are asked for these documents, once you upload them, your accounts will go into a pending status. Once that happens, we will review them on our side, and then as soon as possible. And then once that's done, everything looks good, we'll send a confirmation email to the email address that you put on file initially to let you know that you're ready to get started on your investing journey. That's that.
Great.
Super simple.
There's another question regarding custodial accounts that I'm seeing here that I think it's super interesting, particularly for people who might not have a social security from our community in this country. Could you still be the custodial of an adult, or can you only be a custodial of a minor on Stockpile?
So you can only be the custodian of a minor. Once the minor reaches what we call the age of majority, which varies state by state. Some states, adulthood means 18 years old. Other states, it means 21. But once the minor reaches that age, we convert their accounts to individual accounts.
Got it.
So
okay.
Custodial accounts.
So no adult to adult.
Right. That's a joint account that we don't offer. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. We have a little bit under a half an hour to answer a lot of questions that we have from people watching this session. So I definitely want to get going. And Victor, I know you said we'll talk a little bit about what's not common that's been happening over probably the past 48 hours with some of the stocks in the market. A lot of people are confused by it also, because they're like, I didn't hear about that. That's very confusing to me. So I do think that, to keep it clean for everybody watching the session who's more of a novice in investing, this is a very easy way to invest. You're buying a piece of companies that you like, that you've read, that are going nowhere. We know things in technology might just go up. We know things in artificial intelligence. We know things so do your research and start small. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket, like Nadia was saying. You can start with $5, with $50, with $100. I think that's a really great way to test and learn, and that's very, very, very important. And to diversify, because some companies you might thought, oh, this company sounds amazing, and it didn't do as well. And another one that you might have thought, well, this is sort of interesting, but not quite, that could do better. And then that's how everything sort of balances out. So diversifying is important. So I think if you start doing it, you'll see that it's not scary, that it's not difficult, that it's very, very easy to do, particularly for our younger generations who are so used to having a phone everywhere that they go. All these companies have made it very easy. What's been happening, and I don't know, Victor, if you want to give just a bit of there's a lot of people asking what's up, what's happening, and is this going to be a trend? And other people saying, I've never heard of this. Can you explain to me? So if you don't mind, just giving a bit of context and just giving your own point of view about it.
Well, so I think one of the things we want to be clear about, because we want to make sure that as we go through all the questions and answers, that we really want to make sure that we're not providing specific financial recommendations or advice. We want to provide information to help you make decisions. So we really want to try and focus on that. In terms of the issues with GameStop, Nadia, do you want to go into a kind of a explanation of like what's happening? Because it's one of the things where even my kids who are 10 and 12, what's GameStop and how do I get in on that? So we want to make sure that we provide some context about something that's really very different than has happened in the history of the stock market.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Victor mentioned, this is not super common what has happened. The markets do display some volatility every once in a while, but I think one thing that I can kind of bring a little color to is this whole GameStop kind of frenzy that's happening right now. So GameStop was the subject of what we call short selling. So this might get a little bit confusing for some. I know I get a little bit confused at times, but at its essence, short selling is where, in this case, more experienced investors borrowed shares of the stock to sell and then buy back later at what they hoped and expected to be a lower price, so they can return their initial shares and pocket the profits if the stock price went down like they were expecting it to. So they're basically betting that the stock, GameStop in this case, was going to decrease. The price of the stock was going to decrease. So what happened here was the price of the stock was actually driven up at the time due to a whole bunch of what we call retail investors, average investors like you and me, purchasing the stock, which resulted in an inflated, increased price, which you've likely been seeing or hearing about over the course of the past few days, today especially. So the stock price going up resulted in these initial short sellers being forced to buy the stock back sooner at a higher price, thus further pushing the price of the stock up. So this is a perfect example, just to kind of reel it in, of the fact that we never really know what the market is going to do and when, right? So as I mentioned earlier, something that's down today could skyrocket tomorrow and then plummet the next day, which is why it is so important for you to do your research and really know what it is that you're getting into when investing in a particular stock. Does it align with your objectives, your risk tolerance, your goals? Etc. So that's a little wordy of an explanation, but it's really not straightforward what's happening in the markets. It's a little complex. Yeah.
And we'll try to continue to explain more also on our social feed. So by all means, continue to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere, our own website. We're going to try to, deconstruct everything that's happening and explain it in a fun, culturally relevant way, for sure. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Victor.
Yeah, so I think one thing we want to add as well is that the investing tools that were used around those types of trades are typically higher risk. It's one of the reasons why at Stockpile, we don't offer margin, we don't offer certain tools, because those are typically more risky, especially for novice investors. So when you look at what we offer, the key thing is for it to be simple for people to start investing. There was a comment in the chat around like, how do I figure out what's going on? I go to Yahoo, it's like super confusing. I think that's one of the critical things with Stockpile is we want to make it easy for you to understand, learn, and get started. So, so the things that are part of like the gains and losses with GameStop, those aren't the tools that we provide because we want to really provide protection, especially for new investors.
Of course. And I know there's a few questions around the different platforms. I know even my own nephew asked me like, oh, okay, great, Dia. Can I, put my Stockpile gift card into this other platform that I already have an account with? And we're like, no, although you still have this thing, you're still buying those additional shares of the companies that you love. So it doesn't really matter on which platform you have it. But there's a question here that's interesting. It's coming from Nancy, and she's asking, can I transfer my stocks to like, let's say they like Stockpile better now that they go on and they're like, oh, this was so much better than some other competitor. I want to transfer it all to one. Is that possible? Or once you open it somewhere else, you need to keep different accounts in the different platforms? What's your answer to that, Victor?
Nadia, you want to cover that?
Yeah. Nancy.
Sorry, I keep putting you on the spot, Victor. I'm going to now say Nadia.
No, either of us, we can both take it. So, Nancy, great question. Those are your assets. Those are your funds. You can do whatever you like with them. If you feel that Stockpile isn't the right fit for you, we're more than happy to facilitate a transfer to another account, and vice versa. We're more than happy to accept a transfer from a different platform. So absolutely, we strive to make that process as seamless and easy as possible for you.
Great. And Nadia, while I have you, here's a question that seems perfect for you. What affects, I can't say their name because it's anonymous attendee, but you'll know who you are. What affects the value of a company? Like, what are the things that people should be looking at? And you gave a few ideas, but if you can go a little bit more into detail as people are doing their research.
Yeah. So what affects the value? I think it's a lot of things. First of all, the political climate will definitely have effects on the market. I think another thing is the earnings of the company. How is the company doing? What is the overall perception of the company? How many people are getting in, how many people are getting out? And I think just overall, just check the news. What's the news saying about these companies? What are the big players saying about them? It can really be anything. Victor, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things to look at. There's no single variable. It's not like, oh, this company was way more profitable. That doesn't mean the stock's going to necessarily go up. And it doesn't mean that it's going to go down. There's a lot of things that come into play. Sometimes it's just public perception about a company. So it's really important to look at all of those things and really make an informed decision about how that investment fits into your own investment strategy.
Great. Here's a question about the type of stocks that you're able to buy on Stockpile. So either of you, and I think it's a great question. It's from Carla Paola. Does Stockpile have stocks from all over the world, from companies that are international, or just from companies that are based in the United States?
Yeah, we have all types of stocks. So we offer, domestic stocks, we offer international stocks, we offer ETFs, which can be looked at as like a basket of stocks. If you're not, super privy on just investing in one and you want to spread, like we said earlier, like the risk around, an ETF might be good for you. But no, to your question, definitely not just domestic. We offer international stocks as well.
Okay, that's great. And I know we've answered this question earlier, but there's a lot of questions regarding what if I don't live in the US? I guess, you said two things, Nadia, that you needed to have a social security number and a permanent US address. So if I have a social security number and happen to be now living, because it's the age of being nomad, would work in Paris, what happens? Can I still invest? I'm an American, I have a social security, but I'm not living here at the moment. Is that possible?
So we would need a valid US address.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward with that.
So US address and social security. And I guess for people who are asking on the chat about living abroad, that they might live outside of the US. I know we have some audience members that live in Spain, some others in Mexico, Colombia, Argentina. There are fintech companies that I know in Latin America that are launching, soon to launch, that will sort of be the equivalent of what a Stockpile is here. I don't know if Stockpile has plans to extend beyond the US, but for now it's for people who have these US addresses and social securities. But we will engage with other companies potentially for people who are interested here in investing outside of the US. If you don't have a social security, we'll have those sessions, and we'll also start having the sessions in Spanish as well. So this is our first one. We were excited to launch it with Stockpile, but we will be bringing you monthly sessions with other companies that potentially for you to know and for you to be able to leverage as you start your journey or continue your journey into wealth building. Okay, great. And there's also a lot of questions here about, what do you predict on this? What do you predict about all companies in this? And like Victor said, we can't predict, like we're not allowed to predict. It would be irresponsible. It's against the law. So we can't give that. We can only give you the advice of, there's this possibility now that with as little as $5, you can start investing. Obviously you do your research because that's a very personal decision on what stocks you're going to buy. We can't tell you, hey, pick Tesla over Apple. I can tell you what I pick, but offline, but that's a very personal decision. So I'm gonna unfortunately not be able to address all the questions that are very particular. Should I buy here? Should I buy a precious metal? Should I buy companies that, are into, gas? Those we can't address unfortunately, at least in this session. But there is another question about Social Security. We knew we would have a lot of these, and this is from Humberto, and he says, if someone else's Social Security, does this affect their taxes? Yeah, I think you're going to have to show proof that is you. So we're not going to get into, because that would be fraud to use someone else's Social Security. So we're going to say no to that. But let's say that the question comes from the person who holds the Social Security. How does it affect their taxes, Nadia? That would be a good answer, because once you have those gains, right, that's like working, right? You made money, and what happens to that money? What is taxed? What should people know?
Yeah, so I can just get a little bit into that. So there's going to be 3 separate categories of taxes when it comes to investing. So there's long-term capital gains, there's short-term capital gains, and then there's the separate bracket of taxes on dividends, if you receive dividends. So as far as the logistics of that, reach out to your tax advisor, or, even Google it, long-term gains, short-term gains, taxes on dividends. But those are going to be the 3 separate brackets. So that's a great question.
Yep. You will get tax documentation at the end of the year through a 1099. So there's going to be something that says, hey, you made this much money or lost this much money on the stocks. So you will get some documentation that you can give to your tax professional.
Exactly.
Right. So I guess if you lost money, which none of us want to hear that we lost money, but I have used that in my own personal taxes, right? Well, I lost here, like I put it as part of my write-offs. If you make money, you're not going to be taxed, just to be clear, on the money you invested originally, because that was already with money that you have paid taxes on. So that part, no, you invested $10, your $10 are not going to be taxed. But if you from the $10 made $100, then the difference is going to be taxed. That's exactly what we're talking about here. But obviously there's definitely not a way around that. Here's another very interesting question. I don't have a name either, but it says, if a minor opens an investment account, can it be used against them when applying for financial aid if they apply for college in the future? So let's say one of these, one of our kids, one of our Gen Z kids starts to do great with their investments. are the people looking into financial aid going to be like, oh my God, like you need no financial aid because you've done so well with your Tesla stock?
I wouldn't imagine so. That's a great question.
We'll do some
bit of
more
a tough
digging,
one.
and yeah, exactly. Whoever this person is, because we don't have a name, we just have a phone number. Ping us separately on any of our feeds, and we will get you the right answer to this, because I think this is really, really interesting, specifically as we start saying, hey, the moment your kid's born and they have a social security, start getting them into investing. You know, we know a lot of the pros, but what could potentially be the cons is a smart way to think about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There'll be a lot of variables in there as well. That's why it's tough to answer, just because it depends on tax bracket. There's like a lot of variables where it may or may not affect it. So I think that's where there's just a lot of variables where it's going to be different for that person or literally the person sitting next to them. So
yeah, exactly. If you have like a college counselor at school, that might be a good question for them, or a tax advisor or someone like that. Yeah. But great question. That got me thinking.
Okay, great. Here's another question. Is investing recommended even if you are in debt? You have loans, you have credit cards. I mean, I think I know what the answer is, but I guess it's the same sort of in the same vein as the question of if I'm in bankruptcy, can I still invest? I guess if you still have money to buy a stock, but that's again a very personal decision on how you're going to be using your money and your liquidity, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, Beatrice, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's a very personal decision. I don't think that we're going to tell you one way or the other.
Right.
It's really up to you. Yeah.
Okay, and then let's talk about fees, because we forgot to talk about this, and there is a question from Maria that says, what are the fees for having an account at Stockpile? Can you guys break that down for us?
Yeah, definitely. So there's no fee to sign up. The only fees that we charge are a 99-cent trading fee with any buy or sell. Now that's a flat rate, right? So it's not a percentage of the total amount.
So whether you buy $5 or $5,000, it's 99 cents.
99 cents, right?
So don't buy $1 because it'll eat it all up.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you have the option to fund your account with a linked bank account, that is free. You can, transfer funds to or from your linked bank account. And we also offer, like I mentioned earlier, debit card funding, and you can also purchase stock directly with a credit card. Those do include a small fee, just like any other standard, credit card fee.
So for my cute nephew, who I gave this card to, who's 6 and is going to be buying his Apple, Tesla, and Netflix stock, if he had $100 and is going to put 33.33% into each of the stocks, the fee would apply 3 times for each of the stocks, correct? Am I reading it correctly or not?
Right. So with each transaction, you can only make one transaction, right? So if you want to buy, let's say, Tesla and Apple at the same time, you would have to make 2 separate transactions. So that would be 2 99-cent fees. But what is cool about the gift card is, let's say you gifted your nephew a gift card. The amount that you paid for it would include that 99-cent fee. So
I paid the 99-cent fee.
Yeah, exactly.
Also,
so he would be able to apply that full denomination of the gift card to his investment.
Yeah. So, one bit of clarity. So when you do use a credit card, the main thing is the credit card is typically used for buying a gift card for somebody. Gift card, like credit card for funding is more for a debit card purpose. Credit cards we generally use for the gift card for people, just for convenience.
Okay, great. Here's a question from Julie Camacho, and she's like, how much knowledge do I really need when decide to start investing in stocks? And I think we've covered a little of it, but I mean, how would you guys, I think I'm going to rephrase this question, because there's a lot of this of like, how risky is it? What if I lose all my money like I've seen in the movies? This just seems very difficult. Is it for me? And I think that's exactly what's prevented our communities from building wealth and from get going. So obviously we've given a lot of tips already, but maybe you guys have even a few more to make that anxiety come down. We've said start small so you get the hang of it. Don't put everything into one place. No todos los huevos en una canasta. We say that in Spanish too, right? Not all your eggs in one basket. What other things would you recommend that people think about so it eases their anxiety to get in this journey of investing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think for me, the more that I know, the less anxiety I have around, my investments. So for me, I just like to read around, do your research, do your homework. The Wall Street Journal is a great place to start. Get to know the markets in addition to getting to know yourself as an investor, right? Learn about the markets, look into the different trends. Just do your research. That's really what it comes down to. And then just like Beatriz said, start small. You don't have to go all in the first time. Just start small and then, work your way up, get familiar with the markets. And fractional shares are really what enable you to start as little as you want.
Yeah. And I know for a lot of people in our community hearing the Wall Street Journal, right? Even for me, right? It's like, oh my God, like every word that I'm going to read. Sometimes I'm Googling so many words from the articles on the Wall Street Journal. I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? Not to plug in Suma, but I am going to plug in Suma. If you look in our feeds, if you look on our website, our blog, everything that we do is really making what's out there on the Wall Street Journal in a very simple, fun, culturally relevant way. So I would also recommend that, as Nadia says, educate yourself. And not that you only need to come to Suma. There are so many Latinas, particularly, that have unbelievable seminars and coaching classes that you can also, if you feel comfortable, also join. But there's people within our community that will speak our language, not necessarily Spanish per se, but they do speak Spanish, a lot of them. But, they just know how we grew up and what are the barriers that we've had and what are the sayings that we grew up with, and, how our relationship with money wasn't the same as different cohorts that were not Latinos. So I do recommend that there are resources that are not as difficult as potentially, The Economist or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, that deconstruct it for you in a very culturally relevant way. And that's exactly what we're trying to do at Suma, for sure. So, by all means, check out everything that we do, because we try to be on top of everything that you're going to need in your wealth building journey. I think we're almost running out of time, but I have another question here that I think it's very interesting, because somebody's saying, okay, what if I invest in a stock that is not good and it doesn't have a time? So I don't know if maybe she thought I held on it for years. It's terrible. It's coming down. Like, what is I'm assuming then you can just trade it or sell it for another one and you only pay that 99-cent fee again. Can you explain to people here how would that work? And also, how long would you recommend? I know that's another one of like, how long and what stuff do I buy? But when do you really should be nervous that, oh my God, I think this stock is not going to be good? So it's a two-part question. The first one is easier. Like, how easy is it to say, no longer into Tesla, I'm now all into SpaceX, although owned by the same person. I'm going to swap because I don't want to invest more money. And then, how would that work and what would those fees be? And when do you know it's that time to cut loose?
Yeah, great question. So addressing the fees. So let's say you were in on a stock that you didn't want to be in on anymore. It would be 99 cents to sell that stock. And then if you wanted to, redirect those profits to a different stock, it would be an additional 99 cents to place that buy order. So that answers the fee question. As far as when do you know if it's the right time? Only you know if it's the right time. I think it comes kind of down to, your tolerance, your patience level, and maybe like a bit of experience, right? Like we mentioned before, it might be a good idea to just kind of like ride out the wave, you know? Just because something is down today doesn't mean that it'll be down tomorrow. And so it's really up to you, you know, if you feel like some sort of, if you feel driven to swap out your investments, then that is completely up to you, and we support that. But I think it really comes down to a personal choice there.
Yeah, I think the key thing is always looking at the long term. It's like if you live in Southern California and it rains one day, you don't move out of Southern California because of the one day, right? Things like there is no stop that's gonna always go up. So that's kind of the thing to look at, right? Is that there's going to be always variation every day and during the day. So the thing is always look at like, how does this fit into my long-term strategy, right? So I did want to mention one thing before I forget as well, and it relates to stocks going up and down and the question that came up about taxes. One thing to remember is that as stocks go up and down, you're not going to pay the tax on that until you sell the stock. So if it goes up or down, you're not paying, and you know it's not due. It's once you make the change either to buy or sell a stock, that's when there's a potential tax effect. So if you kind of hold it forever, then you don't have a tax bill.
Yeah, you inherited, so then it's like your kids paying the taxes on the gains potentially. No, but that's a great differentiation to make, because obviously, you know, it's not like, oh, I doubled my investment in a year, but you're still holding to it. That's not going to be taxed that year until you decide to sell it. So that's great for people to know. And we have so many questions, but you know, I know the team at Stockpile was super smart into creating actually a particular email. So I think we're going to be able to at least copy everything that we have from the chat that we haven't gotten to. A lot of the questions were sort of similar, and I did my best to get through some of them. We won't be able, again, like I said, to answer the ones that are very specific on certain things that people could buy or not. But between the teams at Suma and the teams at Stockpile, we will answer your questions. The ones that are on the chat, like I said, we are going to copy and we'll get back to you. And if you have other questions that you did not put up here, or you're hearing this at a time where we were not live, you will still have an opportunity to email us at an email that I think, Nadia, you have in the presentation, or somebody was going to put up, yes, which was exactly the email that people can email us with their questions. I think better questions on Stockpile, obviously, you know, for the team at Stockpile, other questions and what does this mean, we'll be able to, with our own financial coaches, be able to address for you guys. But we are going to get back to everybody. We want this to be as useful as possible. We also would love to hear from you guys. What do you want to know? We are planning different topics. We want to talk about taxes and write-offs next month. We want to talk about crypto. It's a very hot topic at the moment. So what else do you want to know? And would you find this useful for some family members that we have these sessions in Spanish as well? So those are the things that we're exploring. We love feedback. There's no way to get better and to do better and to serve you better than getting your feedback. So by all means, whether it's on our social, whether it's on the email that we're going to provide you, do give us feedback. I'm taking the feedback from this session here of saying, first, let Nadia finish the presentation before you crazy lady keep interrupting her. So next time I'm going to be very vigilant on that. We wanted to get through so many questions. So we will take your feedback to heart. We want to do better. We're here to serve you. Both of our companies really, really care about our community starting to have the same opportunities that other communities have had for centuries. So with that, I really want to thank Victor. I want to thank Nadia. There have been so many people on the back end, but from both of our companies working hard to make this session happen. So you guys know who you are. We thank you for all your passion and your commitment. And this was very exciting that we got to do our first Dinero sessions with our friends from Stockpile. Don't know if you have any other parting words, Victor or Nadia.
Nadia, I know you have some parting words.
I do. So we actually have one last slide with all of the information, but if you guys could just enable the screen sharing, we could get that. We have the email address for
Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys about the gift cards that you guys were so generous to give us for our community. I keep getting all these WhatsApps on my phone saying, do not say we're going to do it at the end. We are going to do it in a couple of days on our social feed. So we will get a hold of you, even if you haven't seen our social feed, when we announce who were the winners of the Stockpile gift card, so you guys can start on your investing journey. We will be getting that out in the next couple of days. So I wasn't able to save the names at the end of the session. I think there was something too complex to be able to do that. But we will announce it in all of our social feeds, and then we have your information, so we'll be able to get a hold of you guys directly as well. And right there it is. It's Suma support at stockpile.com. So the questions that were not answered, we will answer. More questions that you might have for us, this is the perfect email, Suma support at stockpile.com.
Quick thing before I forget, one of the things that came up was a lot of the terminology might be difficult. If you go to stockpile.com, there's a rookie guide there that will give you a lot of plain language information about how to start investing, and a lot of the terminology, like just really using regular language for all of us to understand. You can find a lot of it there, but please feel free to ask us questions as well.
That's great. And you know what, Victor, we'll be looking into that guide too, and maybe also putting some up on our social feeds, and that could be some fun co-branded content that we can have for our community. So more on that soon, but by all means, check it out. I know I will after the session. Thank you, everybody. This is great to have you. It feels a little strange not to be live and see your faces and feel your energy. I thrive on that, but hopefully you found this useful. And again, would love your feedback. And we are very, very excited to have this opportunity to serve you and to help you in your wealth building journey. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next Dinero session.